Okay, Google CloudNxt concludes the week and brought tons of announcements. Agents, and some media models.
And if you haven't heard, the herd is coming. Meta launches Llama 4, and we'll talk about what it's involved and what they're bringing with this new herd.
I like chewing like a llama. All right. Microsoft Copilot, your AI companion, is building Mustafa Suleyman's vision into features, tons of them, actions, podcasts, vision, and a lot more coming soon.
And Microsoft released a few new features, capabilities this past week, things that revolve around safety, developer tools, and models and how they're used within Azure AI Foundry as well as Fabric. So, all that and more coming up in this episode of the AI Files.
Stay tuned. Greetings. Welcome to the AI Files podcast. If you're looking to stay up to date on the AI, this is the podcast for you. I'm Shadab Hussain. I'm the director of AI at Microsoft, and I'm your co-host.
Hello, everybody. Jaime Basilico, as you know already. I'm the other co-host here for the AI Files. My day job is a data and AI technical specialist and architect. And as a reminder, please note this is not an official Microsoft channel, so the views and opinions expressed by myself and Shadab are our own and do not represent the views of Microsoft.
All right, let's start with the AI code of the week. So this week, Jamie, I will talk about the Shopify CEO's Toby Lutke. His memo actually went viral, and it wasn't supposed to be, but it was an internal memo that actually got leaked, and then ultimately published that on the X. And it was all focused around the use of the AI, right? So, and he's, one of the prominent code in that was quoting him: before asking for more headcount and resources, teams must demonstrate why they cannot get what they want done using AI, unquote. And this of course became like it's a 3 4 page kind of a memo. It was part of an email, and that went viral. A lot of people were actually quoting from it, highlighting a lot of lessons and all those things. How several gurus come up with all kind of lessons. That's what happened on this. But it was actually, I would say, something remarkable about it, that in terms of how the companies are actually using the AI, right? That's what it actually highlights, and how the leaders are actually driving it. It was actually titled "The AI Usage is Now a Baseline Expectation." That's how it was titled. And then he talked about using AI well is a skill that needs to be carefully learned, and by using it a lot, and that AI usage is now a fundamental expectation of everyone at Shopify. And then he also talked about, every team should ask of themselves, coding him, what would this area look like if autonomous AI agents were already part of the team? This question can lead to really fun discussions and projects, unquote. So again, I mean, it's dominated by the use of AI and agent, etc. Now, let me put some context around it. This company, Shopify, is a Canadian company that actually helps a lot of small businesses, add the e-commerce and shopping abilities to their websites and the services. Um, this company has been like growing a lot, in terms of like 20-25% is an average growth rate, okay, in the last several years. And in fact, to give you some figures, Jamie, like how it has been actually growing, let me show you that, some of the figures in terms of the growth. And if you see 2020, this company was about $2.93 billion, and then it has grown since then to about $8.88 billion. So a lot of growth. It has acquired some companies, then it has, like, sold some companies as well, things like that. But in general, the growth has been pretty tremendous. Now, in 2020, when they were just about $2.93 billion, their headcount was about 7,000 people, and they grew rapidly in 2021. I think that was time when a lot of COVID was actually shaping, and their headcount became like 10,000. So they hired a lot of people. The revenue was $4.61 billion. They also acquired a company, Primer. And then they acquired another company next year. The headcount growth was again there, 11,600 people. And then in 2023, the headcount actually went down to just about 8,300, while the revenue was still growing. And they also offloaded a company, what they acquired in, it's called Deliver, and they offloaded that company in the 2023 as well. And again, in the what do you say, 2024, again they did some layoffs, etc. So there have been a lot of layoffs going on in 2023 and 2024. They have laid off people in the customer service area as well, the contact center, things like that.
Yep.
Not because the revenue is down, revenue is consistently growing, but their use of AI and technology has actually helped them gain ton of efficiencies.
Yeah,
And
and all those things you just mentioned, it kind of makes me think, is Shopify different than any other technology company that's delivering value for its customers? And I would answer no, they're not so much different. Yeah, every company is going to have their nuances and what they do and what they deliver. Are they IT focused or quote unquote software focused? And you could kind of argue that they are or not. I mean, obviously what they put out is, but at the crux of this, it's about the workforce and what the workforce is doing. And going back to the quote that you pulled out, which to me is very insightful for not only Shopify but I think industries as a whole, is that they're focusing on what can AI do for their teams, and whether or not it's an agent or a bot that's going to do something that's specific or specified for a given area. It's about, can it be interwoven within your team? And do you really need a new headcount if that AI or set of AI tools can do the work of that person? Now, the thing that I took away from because I did read the article or it was funny. It was going to be leaked, but then the CEO wanted to get in front of it, and he just put it out there. We're like, all right, this is really what I meant. But so I read it, and what struck me in this is that they're not saying that they're not going to hire, and I think that's what a lot of people, why it went viral, is like Shopify is not going to hire people anymore. They're just going to use agents, or they're going to use AI to replace that. That's not what he meant and not what he said. Yes, it's true that, an internal team, if you've got a team of 5 people and you need to hire, or if you've got the requirement that you need another person, it's looking introspectively and say, have you thought about and have you looked at, can this be done by a set of technology? And if the answer is yes, then all right, maybe I don't need to hire that person. But if that set of tools can't do it, they're not saying there's a hiring freeze. So I just want to make sure people understand that, and because I know that was why this thing kind of like spiked up across the internet, because people were like, all right, companies are not going to hire anymore. To me, the other big takeaway on this is, if you don't believe that AI will take your job, I think you're being naive as well. So it's important to stay up to date, and that's why you're listening to this podcast, episode right now, because you want to stay up to date on all things AI, which is great. But I will tell you, there's a vast majority of people that don't even know, what AI means, let alone understanding how to use it. So I think you got to weigh both things. It's not like we're going to stop hiring people, and it's not like you shouldn't know AI, because someone who does, they're going to take your job. So anyway,
that is true. That is true. Well said, Jamie. In fact, there is a lot of other trend also going on, that employees who are 40 plus are also actually at higher risk, right? Companies generally target them because they are they are perceived that they will not be upskilled easily. They will resist the change. They are not tech savvy, and they are expensive and all that kind of thing, right? um Although I'm sure that you and I, we don't agree with that, right? you
I
know
feel like I'm 25, so that's all right.
exactly. So the thing is that this is actually hitting, right? And yeah, I mean, like, unfortunately there are a lot of people who are still, I would say, asleep, right? They haven't really woken up to the fact that AI is really, really, really can be, like, it can really disturb things late in their career. But there is actually darker side of this as well, Jamie, right? And I just want to mention this, that while it is important, like this is basically a representation of AI first as a culture, right? So whatever you do, AI first, right? Not just from a technology and the architecture point of view, but also even the hiring point of view, right? So AI first is truly the this is the embodiment of that. But the thing is that also I feel that there is this cutthroat culture, right? And this started with 2024, and Meta started doing this year of efficiency, and now like a lot of companies are trying to emulate that, right? This year of efficiency, and they're cutting down, okay, remove the managers and do this. And I feel that this there is a darker side of it, because ultimately companies and those leaders, they actually build those inefficiencies, and then they just fire and lay off people, right? I mean, ultimately there has to be a human side to this as well, right? There, you put people in those charge, you put people in those areas where they are doing something, and they're not being given the AI empowerment and things like that, and then you're just letting them go. I'm talking about the vast majority of the people, right? I mean, of course there are some who probably deserve to be let go because they've become like they're just basically unproductive or things like that, but I'm not talking about those cases. I'm talking about vast majority of people. I think there is also need to be an employee first approach, while the AI first is also being considered. There has to be an opportunity for them to also upskill, right? So I think while like you and I, we are fortunate that we do a lot of AI, we get a lot of resources to learn from AI. Microsoft enables all of that, but not all companies are doing that. I think it is very important that the people also being put first before the efficiency drives, and they're being given an opportunity, right, before they are being just considered a number. So important thing, I feel. Anyway, okay. With that, let's get started with some news as well, Jamie. That OpenAI is actually rolling out a new memory feature in ChatGPT, enabling conversations, which is like based on your historical conversations, right? So, for example, if I've been talking about that, hey, I love this hobby, or my birthdays are coming, or things like that, right? So it's a personalized, and every time you converse with chat gpt, you will feel like that you're starting something new, right? And sensitively so, right? Because people have been concerned about the privacy invasion and all those things. But I think now that people have accepted it, really, people are coming around to having more personalized conversation. This new feature is, I think, a game changing, because it allows your chat gpt to actually remember those conversations, those contexts, and then work it out with you, right? It knows what colors you like, what hobbies you have, even about your family and other, and then it can actually use that. It's called memory. And you can enable that. The feature was already actually available, you had to actually enable that. But now this becomes basically, you can do it actually for the historical part. Of course, it's not available in all the geographies, particularly the EU and UK, and some of the European countries. But otherwise, this is available to ChatGPT Pro and the Plus. It's also, by the way,
Yeah.
by default available for somebody who has already enabled the memory function in the past.
Yeah, when I first saw this news come out, I'm like, I already have that. I'm already using it. And so I had to, as you said, dig a little deeper, and the enhancements that it makes in terms of more context, and in terms of what your quote unquote interaction with the chatbot actually is with ChatGPT. But the stored memories, because my experience with that, when I was first using ChatGPT, I didn't even realize it was on. I guess I might have turned it on at some point, whatever it was, a year ago, and then it ran out of memory space. And what I mean by that, like if you use ChatGPT and you're on Pro, you can go to settings and you can see the memories, or what it, like, contextual things it knows about you. And I'm like, I don't really want you to remember that. So like deleting some of those things out. So I'm eager to go in and see if it's rolled out to me yet. I checked whatever it was last night, and I still don't have it. I'm a ChatGPT Plus user, so it's interesting. I don't mind keeping, quote unquote, past conversations, because it only helps with the things that I'm trying to interact with it on. But like I said, I did notice it was somewhat limited. I forgot if it was like 30 different things it remembers about you, something like that. At least in the past version of it.
Yeah, we will find out what it remembers. I hope not the bad things. Uh, and I
you,
hope it
you
doesn't
can
try
you,
to
Like I said, you can remove them, which is good. So
Yeah, yes, you can customize it. That's right. Yeah, I don't want another I would say somebody to nag me and reprimand me. Okay, by the way, one more thing, just a fun part, Jamie. There is actually a meme that went viral. In fact, it is based on a news. So Linda McMahon, okay, who was the CEO of the Worldwide Wrestling Entertainment, she was actually talking about the education, right, and how it is important to have this technology conversation early in the childhood and in the school, etc. And I think she meant to say AI, but I think the script just somehow didn't work out, and she just kept referring to as A1. Like, okay, so imagine she's talking about, yeah, the skill, the schools need to teach A1 skill to the children in the kindergarten itself, and there's a company actually by the name of that produces A1 sauce, and they say, yeah, we agree. It's best to start them early, and that's what this graphic many people might have seen. So it is funny, and actually that reminded me something. Like in the past also, there is Indian Prime Minister Modi. Actually, he was doing some speech. What happened was that, again, sometimes the way the scripts are written, sometimes you don't understand how, right? So somebody probably capitalized, like the
yeah,
misses, right? How you write
yeah.
the misses, MRS, and somebody capitalized it. So when he was talking about another of his counterpart, I think Sri Lankan president, he says MRS rather than misses, right? So it's fun. Some funny things happen like this. Once I also remember somebody like referring to Chinese premier as President 11 rather than President Xi, right? Really funny instances. Um,
That's funny. I do like A1 steak sauce, though. I will admit that. So A1 combined with AI, and there's got to be something in there somewhere, right?
that's true. Yeah, I never tried it before, but yeah, now I think I should. All
That's
right.
great. So I guess I don't know how to make a segue between A1 steak sauce and new models, but I'll do it the hard way. So Meta, maybe it's a herd of A1 steak sauce. I guess. Yeah, that's the tie. Herds, cattle, steak sauce into Meta. So, what in all seriousness, Meta launched their 4.0 version of Llama. It actually comes in sorry, I'm still thinking about the A1 sauce. I'm like, the Meta Llama 4.0 comes in three different versions. So let me put up a slide real quick that will show these things. But
And since you made the connection, now I can't stop thinking of llama steaks and even sausage.
yeah, there's a meme coming. I think maybe for our next episode, we'll use ChatGPT image generation to create something between llamas and herds and A1 steak sauce. So be on the lookout for next one. But again, all seriousness, there's three models that Meta put out for Llama 4. So Scout is their smallest, and this is a general purpose model. It's got 17 billion active parameters. What's interesting about this set of Llama models, and I'll talk about it more, especially when I get down to what Maverick is doing, because that's the sort of like the sweet spot. But they're using a mixture of experts to actually build these models, and I'll get into more of like what that actually means in a minute or two. But um, so this model, their smallest one, Scout, 17 billion active parameters, 16 experts. So when you combine those experts, it's basically like having a model inside of a model or an agent inside of a model. It runs basically its pathways, but that totals out to 109 billion parameters. The thing about this is that you could fit this whole model on a single H100 GPU, which means that when you think about the portability and where I could run this, very very efficient in where I can run this particular model. And since it has these 16 experts and a size of 109 billion parameters, it's powerful. So this opens up a lot of possibilities for doing things like multi-document summarization, being able to parse large amounts of user data and activity for personalized tasks, as well as reasoning over code bases. So I could spin up a single GPU and run this in an infrastructure as a service play and have something be very powerful. If you step up from there, what they also released is Maverick. This one has 17 billion active parameters, just like Scout does, but instead of 16 experts, it's got 128 experts, which is 400 billion parameters. So this one offers high quality, but delivering it at a lower cost compared to something like the previous Llama 3.3 with 70 billion parameters. So if you step back and think about what they're doing, they're providing a higher capable model at lower cost because they've introduced this MOE or mixture of experts architecture. Something that is not out yet. So Scout and Maverick are out. But what is not out is Behemoth. And I love these names, by the way. Like we're talking about a large model. Well, let's call it Behemoth. That's big, right? So this is still in training. It's still in research. But what's important about this, yeah, it's going to be super large. It's going to have 288 billion active parameters and 16 experts. So that's going to be, 2 trillion parameters. But what they're doing is they're using this Behemoth model, even as it's still in its training state, to use it as a distillation training mechanism for those other Llama 4 models. So again, super important around how they're architecting this. And as I said before, they're doing a mixture of experts, or MOE as it's affectionately called. So this allows the model to actually operate in a more efficient manner because it's actually only dealing with a model that's a fraction of the total model size, because it could break out its parameters by these token rates to reduce the overall computational cost. Again, that's how they're able to do Scout in just one H100. So, if you follow along for what's in here, a very simple architecture, but basically, there's a router that comes in when you call into the model based on what you want to do. And then it steps through, right? Well, what do I need to do? How do I actually, running on this? So this router, and we're looking at the Scout model here with up to 16 different experts, but it routes it based upon, all right, let me parse this thing out. So we're actually doing, simultaneous thought process against the large language model, but it's returning that set based upon a shared combined combination of all that, and then it sends it back out. So this is how they're doing it. And by the way, this is not like a groundbreaking, and Meta is the first one to do this. There's other organizations, other companies that are doing MOE, but it's the first time that Meta is doing it within their Llama models.
It's also
So
the first time that they've actually named their models like the Scout and Maverick and Behemoth. Otherwise, it was always 15 billion, 70
yeah,
billion, like that
yeah,
kind of thing.
it's a little bit easier to refer to it, actually. They've also brought in some other techniques as well for dealing with the way that they create the model in the first place. So without going into too technical, there's what they call hyperparameters for creating or training a model. So what they've created is what they call MetaP. It's a specified training technique for their Llama models, or the 4.0 class of models. And this actually puts additional focus on what they're able to do in terms of the tuning as it goes through the training process. So the one last thing which I'll mention, yes, you could go grab this on Hugging Face, download the model, but it's also included within Microsoft's Azure AI Foundry set of model catalogs. So you could pick up again the Scout model that's provided in both the 17B 16 experts, as well as a 16 set of experts in instruct mode. And then also within the Foundry, there's the Maverick in the instruct mode as well. So you've got three different flavors of models to pick from the Azure AI Foundry catalog. Uh, One last thing which I'll mention, because I know that there's been a little chatter around this, so I can't claim or deny. I'll just tell you what they've published out there. I have started to test a little with the model. I haven't done any like benchmark testing, but I have used the Maverick. It seems pretty capable, to be honest with you. But I'm showing you the Behemoth instruction tune benchmarks. What you notice here is it outpaces everything. So like the Claude Sonnet 3.7 model, the Gemini 2.0 Pro. It's not the 2.5 Pro, but at least the 2.0 and GPT 4.5. So it's either the latest models or close to the latest models that they're comparing against. You noticed every benchmark they're higher than that. So some of the chatter is that they've tuned the model to be performant in benchmarks. So if you take that into consideration, like the set of data that you would run for the benchmarks, like just tuning the model, they've denied that's the case, and hopefully it's true, because you don't want to just tune stuff for benchmarks, because then that's not necessarily real scenarios or use case. That would be for everybody. But if you look at the Behemoth, which we're looking at now, they've published the Maverick and Scout benchmarks. They're all pretty darn good. So when you think about the cost around this model, couple that with the benchmarks, at least, again, it seems very capable at a low price point, at least compared to the competitors out there.
Yeah, you're right, Jamie. I think Meta has a bit of a pressure after the DeepSeek. Like they are a bit under pressure because they were kind of open source leader in the models, and then DeepSeek, kind of just came and like rolled them over, and now they're trying to actually, gain that prominence again. The controversy that you're talking about is, I think, where they have a Maverick model, an experimental version which is supposedly fine-tuned and specifically for the conversation. It is different version than what is actually made, or what is released for developers, right? That the unmodified version, and that the modified version, which is conversationally particularly fine tuned, was actually doing well on the chart. That's LM Arena, right? Particularly where the people actually compare and rate the models. But the unreleased version actually got placed somewhere down the line, right? Maybe 20, 30 places. It's not, it wasn't performing as well. So yes, there was a controversy about that. Meta was deliberately trying to top the charts and then releasing something specifically for those benchmarks compared to what they're releasing actually for the developers. So that was the controversy that you were referring to.
Yep. So on to other news. I know it was a big week for Google with CloudNxt, and they had a ton of announcements out there. You want to enlighten us a little bit on what came out of the Google CloudNxt
Yeah,
2025?
I think Google Cloud Next, just like others, a lot of announcements were done. But if you take out the announcements specific to the model's name, and if you just hear in general statement like whatever Sundar Pichai talked about or Korean talk about, etc. And I was thinking that if you just replace their voice with, let's say, Satya Nadella's or Andy Jesse's voice, or somebody like that, you would not feel a difference, right? Because they all talk the same thing actually,
Yeah.
regardless of the company, in terms of the future, etc. But that's where we were. I think one of the things that I really liked was, they are actually working on this AI enhanced version of the classical movie, The Wizard of the Oz, right? And that AI enhanced version will be actually played in that is the sphere, which is essentially a mega dome structure to the the movies with the large definition context. It's in the Vegas, right? Vegas or Los Angeles, I'm forgetting. um, but that is like they have been working on that for 2 years, and it will have enhanced version. Basically there will be some in painting, like, or some out painting, like, essentially extending the frame and things like that, that you have to do to restore some of the colors, things like that, right? So there are some snips available which shows like what kind of changes they are making to that. But it would be actually, it would be fun to watch, to be honest, right? It would be a fun project, and it would be great demonstration of how the AI can be used in restoring the classics and enhancing them, and making them such, um, I would say, a huge quality, right, in terms of the definition. um, but anyway, other than those announcements, there was of course a lot of things related to the AI that was actually talked about. So let's talk about some of those announcements. Um, a lot of new media models, right? The features in terms of what they have announced at the CloudNxt. So like VO2, they have like in painting, which is essentially removing the objects, right? So if you have some objects in the picture, you can actually remove that. You can see some of those, it's in the video, right? We're not just talking about the image. You can see some of those samples that they have released. It's pretty impressive. You can barely make it, you can barely notice if there was something there already, right? So it's really neatly done. You can do the out painting, which is essentially extending the frame, like, this picture, and on top of that it can paint out, and extend the frame, things like that. You can do the camera angle adjustments, you can pan out, you can pan right, push in, things like that. Interpolation is pretty interesting as well. You have image of one person at a certain frame, and then you have another image of the same object or person, etc., with something else. And then interpolation will actually extend from that origin frame to the destination frame, right? So it will create that entire sequence of the motion or whatever it is happening, right? So that's pretty interesting. There were also actually other features, like, creating the landscape videos into portrait and things like that, drone style clips, etc. So I think VO2 is pretty interesting, actually. Then there is a Imagine 3, which we also talked about earlier. It's essentially it's basically text to video, text to image model, right? So this is something like what GPT-4o native imaging that we already talked about. In fact, Imagine actually came before that. It was very impressive, and then GPT-4o also actually talked about, did the same thing. Um, then there is another model called Lyria or Lyria. I don't know how they call it, but it is essentially a text to music model, right? So something like what Suno does. It's available in preview, and it's a first enterprise ready text to music model. You can take a text prompt and create 30-second music clips, which are like royalty free. Um, there is also,
I was gonna say, I mean, all these things, I'm like eager to jump in and try to use some of this. Lyria is a great example of that. I mean, we could even put music clips into these episodes. What really gets me jazzed up is, just how far things have come, not only between Sora and, we talked about some of the imaging or the video capabilities last week, from some other companies that are putting things out. But the bottom line is that we're seeing these advancements and things just keep on getting better. I don't know if we're at the point yet where a whole movies or things like that will be created by these video generation tools, but I don't think we're that far off, to be honest with you. But just thinking where we've come in the last 18 months is amazing. And to have VO2 or Imagine 3 for photos and Lyria, and I know you're going to talk about some other things. It puts so much power into the hands of individuals, let alone industries or companies that are within quote unquote media. But to me, whether it's Google or it's OpenAI or fill in the blank with other ones, these tools are just getting more powerful and more powerful, which makes me super excited.
exactly. And they're like, I think one of the things is, Jamie, that you talked about, right? It's not very far off that entire movies are created like this. The question is that, are humans gonna accept and adapt to that, or will they still prefer, the conventional filmmaking? I think they will. If there is a great storytelling, I think it's really the story that matters. It's really the quality of those rendering that matters. I hope that the actors are not shown with like six fingers and some weird physics, etc.
Yeah.
As long as that doesn't happen, people should be fine. I think as it's really about the storytelling, right? But I think also I also feel that there is a innate, the feature of the movie making, which is really about the acting, right? So we also, when we watch these things, we also admire how a person can get into that character, right? I mean, when you watch things like what, like actor like Daniel Day Lewis, for example, right? Or Jack Nicholson, right? Some of the favorite, yes, you can make actually the movie clips an actor doing the same thing, but somehow that that human ability demonstration will be missed. So I'm still mixed on this, Jamie. I don't know if I will like, you watch Jack Nicholson, that famous scene in the few good, what is that,
A few
uh,
good men. Yeah.
yeah, a few good men, right? Now that's impressive because humans are performing that, right? It's amazing that how people are amazing and getting into that character and then delivering it. Now if it's similarly an animated version or AI created version of that happens, would I be that impressed? I don't know. It's I think jury is out on this one, to be honest. We'll see. um but anyway, these are actually pretty good enhancements and the announcement that came out of CloudNxt. And then, of course, there is a 2.5 Flash, which is coming out because now they've already announced the Gemini 2.5 Pro, which is in preview right now. It has million context, etc. Uh, but it's a multimodal input, but not multimodal output. It can do actually a lot of complex coding tasks and review and all those things. They will add Gemini 2.5 Flash as the another model in the family, which will be essentially low latency, more cost efficient. It can also do like it can have something like a thinking budget, right? So it can adjust the processing time based on how much thinking budget you want to actually allocate that. So it would be exciting to see that as well. It's not available yet right now, but they also announced something called Live API for Gemini models, which is something like, I think, that real time API that the Chat GPT or the GPT-4o has, where like essentially it's like a real time conversation, right? So I think it's a speech to speech model where you can actually build the real time conversation application like a chatbot and things like that, like on the voice. Um, they also announced something called Global Endpoint, which is essentially a what Microsoft also has and called global, you can say, service, right? Where the you can go to any region and get the service done if data residency is not your requirement. Now, other than that, of course, there were a lot of agents. So they talked about something that really got very viral was also the A2A protocol and ADK. So essentially, ADK is like Agent Development Kit. It's a open source framework, which is basically a framework to build the multi-agentic systems and having the control over their behavior. It also supports model context protocol, which they were, like still debating whether they will build that or not. They did, I think, some survey, and everybody like, yeah, yeah, model context protocol is a way to go, and they have built that as well. They've provide that compatibility. So now model context protocol is now being supported by all the three hyperscalers now.
Yeah, I was just about
Um,
to say that's every one of whether it's Microsoft, OpenAI, Google, Anthropic, MCP seems to certainly be it's already caught on fire, but
mm.
expanding even more.
I think it's a big win for Anthropic, right?
Yeah,
Some open source that caught on. So they also actually released something called A2A protocol. Jamie, this is actually interesting. This is more like while the MCP is more for like interacting for the agents to actually consume the data and then like go to the data sources, etc. A2A is more about agent to agent, right? Like kind of a peer to peer communication. So it's a framework to help building that agent to agent protocol, and they're building this in the partnership with like more than 50 partners, right? And a lot of them are like consulting and services company who are actually helping build this, right? So they're trying to actually evolve this framework to build that. And I talked about this agent OS, I think a couple of episodes ago from
Yep.
PwC. It seems like something similar to it, where basically your agents can be agnostic, can be from any company, can be from any provider, and yet they are able to actually communicate with each other. That requires a framework, that requires a common communication protocol, etc., right? Which is what agent OS from PwC is supposed to do, and looks like the A2A is also similar, on the similar line.
Yeah, this one is super interesting to me because yes, companies are still at their infancy stages of creating agents, but I can tell you from my own personal experience working with a few, I'll call it leading enterprise organizations, they fully understand that if whatever they build, they probably need to interact with other agents, whether it was their own homegrown agents and or agents delivered by other companies, or think about the business to business, right? So you need agents to communicate in some form of fashion. This is an opportunity or an area, certainly where Google is jumping in with the ATA protocol to help in that regard. There's some other things that are being developed still in its infancy stages. I mean, there's some discussion and talk around the open APIs and how that could be used, but this is a great area to jump in at. So much in the same way that we just talked about MCP, and that's a way of actually getting the data sources. That's great, but what about that agent to agent discussion? So, diving a little bit deeper on this, I started to look at it a little bit more because I want to actually start playing with it, to go from, let's say, something like an Azure AI um, Foundry agent. How can that speak to an agent that might be built within the Google or GCP platform? But at its core functionality, there's several core features with this. At least what they're putting out there is the open protocol. So this is built upon existing standards. So it's not like they're creating a whole new protocol. This is based upon JSON, goes over HTTP. So it just makes integration easier on that regard. They've also put security and designed enterprise grade security for authentication and authorization inside of this protocol. It's flexible because again, it supports either quick specific agent tasks or long running tasks. And this is reality because we don't really know how long an agent or what it's going to do. I mean, I've seen in some cases some of the things I've built, it goes off and a couple of minutes later will come back with its response. In other cases, I might have like microservice based agent that comes back really quick. So the flexibility is there. The other thing too is it's the modality. At least what they put out for ATA is agnostic, in that it doesn't matter if it's text, audio, or video, which is again important because these agents, just in the way that we were talking about 2 minutes ago, with doing video as an example. Well, we might have some of these agentic systems that are actually building video for us or audio rather than just a text response. So super important. So I see this as a great step forward. Be interesting to see what other foundational model companies put out. It's always going to be like, all right, we like your thought, but we're going to come up with our own model. So it'll be interesting to see. But I mean, much in the same token that we just talked about Anthropic and what they put out with their model context protocol, maybe this will be something similar that others adopt as well. So anyway.
So Jimmy, the A2A, is it comparable to what Microsoft has in terms of AutoGen? Is that what is comparability?
So AutoGen will allow for multi-agentic systems, but it's still within an agent that is constructed through a derivation of semantic kernel. That's AutoGen is. It's a sorry. AutoGen is a framework in and of itself, but it's not necessarily meant for calling agents that are outside of the AutoGen world. So semantic kernel, AutoGen. You've got some other capabilities that are being generated off of AutoGen. I'm calling them like offshoot platform protocols. But to answer your question, no, it's not the same. So AutoGen is going to be a way for multi-agentic systems that are still based upon that same set of agents. Whereas this, you can call an agent that might be within Agent Force from Salesforce, an agent that theoretically would be on Foundry to an agent that's on the Google platform to anything else. That's the intent. I would love to jump in and try some of this out, actually, specifically to see if that's actually going to work.
Right. And like let's say this A2A or the agent OS that we talked about from PwC on, and there could be some more open source framework that may also come out. What would happen if people are developing across them? I hope there is a compatibility between the frameworks as well, right? They should still be able to work even if one of them is developed using another framework. So I
Yeah,
don't know how would that work, cross
and
frameworks.
and that's why I come back to say that they're using these open protocols. So like the JSON RPC, which is it's based upon. So as long as you're building a protocol that aligns with that same structure, so within A2A they actually call it an agent card, which is a way that they advertise what's in the agent itself, like what it can do. Think of like an API layer, like here's my inputs, here's my outputs. That agent card defines what the agent can do and what it's anticipating on the exceptions. So if there's different model or different agent protocols to speak to each other, as long as they're defining the same JSON representation as their inputs and outputs, then yeah, I could have something that is built within different agents or even different agent protocols. But as long as that communication mechanism is the same, which is that JSON quote unquote agent card, at least the way that they're calling it, then yeah, I could use those different protocols because that tie is that JSON structure for the input output.
Okay, great. And there are a couple of announcements around the agent as well. Of course, the agent engine, which is like a fully managed agent runtime in the Vertex AI, which actually help you deploy your custom agent to production with the testing, evaluation, release, and reliability, and take that to the scale. They also talked about the grounding with the Google Maps. So that if your agents require geospatial information, you can actually use the grounding with the Google Maps to actually help with that. There is also a Google agent space, and there were some enhancements actually they announced as well, which is like essentially you can go to the Chrome for the enterprise, and then you just type that, okay, like essentially you are searching in the agent space, right? Agent space is a collection of all their agents and everything that in the enterprise that employees can actually use, and you can actually search within the agent space from the Chrome enterprise as well. There is also, they talked about agent gallery, which is like a list collection of all the agents from Google and teams and the partners, etc., for an enterprise available within the enterprise so that they can actually make use of them. They can easily find them and use them. There is a designer also, by the way. There is an agent designer, which is, I think, is equivalent to kind of a Copilot Studio, probably like a low code, no code platform. It's basically no code interface to build the agents, and you can use that to like automate the task, etc., things like that. So seems like something equivalent to maybe the agent builder or the Copilot Studio from Microsoft. They also have like something called idea generation agent and the deep research agents, which again you can use these pre-built agents like canned agents, which are available within the agent space to actually do your work, right? Whether it's for ideation or it's for the deep research, something like what you also find as a features in the Microsoft Copilot. Uh, so it seems like equivalent to that. All right, and one of the last thing, I think there were like lots of announcement, like over 200 announcement they were made at the CloudNxt. But another important thing was the Ironwood TPU, the tensor processing unit. It's a seventh generation. It is designed for inference tasks. It will deliver 5 times more the compute capacity and 6 times more high bandwidth memory. I think it will be available somewhere in 2025 or 2026. It's a seventh generation TPU. TPUs are essentially um, custom, I would say they are highly specialized for the deep learning tasks, particularly, right? I mean, there is a CPU which does things more serially, and there is a GPU which does things a lot more parallelly, are really good at it. And of course, the NVIDIA specializes in that. And then there's a TPU. TPU was, I think they first came out in 2015. They were specifically designed for deep learning kind of a specialization, like metrics kind of calculations. And and that's what the tensor means actually, right? So it really specializes for machine learning and deep learning tasks. It kind of like, I would say, it kind of competes against the GPU, but I think GPUs are much more popular for the AI, because GPUs, which were originally designed for really the graphics and video processing, it was discovered that they were also actually really good for AI as well. So I think there is a kind of a battle between TPUs and GPUs. TPUs are, I think still, I would say, still more specific to Google. I don't know if other companies have widely adopted it yet, but if you use the Google Translator or some of the Google, AI suite and Gmail and things like that, they probably are running on the TPUs.
Hmm, cool. Yeah. So bottom line, lots of announcements from from Google. We will put in the show notes. There's a great set of links. There's sort of like a recap of the keynotes. So if you want to go a little bit deeper, certainly go look at that. So switching from Google, going over to Microsoft, a slew of additional announcements on the AI front with Microsoft. One of the first ones I'll talk about is the extension inside of Visual Studio Code for Azure AI Foundry. So this is not earth shattering, so I don't want to make it sound like it's something bigger than potentially what it might sound like. But if you're familiar with Visual Studio Code, and even for that matter, Cursor, which I use both. You can have extensions. So there's an extension where now you could see the AI, Azure AI Foundry, and there's two things really that are in that. One is looking at the models. So a model that you would have deployed from the model catalog within Foundry can be seen through this extension. I'm showing you literally my Visual Studio Code environment with this extension. But the other thing that it does is it allows you to see agents that you've constructed. This is, again, literally one of the agents that I've built inside of Foundry using the Foundry Studio Agent UI initially. But what this extension allows you to do is to build, create, deploy, and obviously you could view agents that would get deployed into the Foundry agent service directly. So it just allows you to see what's there and very quickly, again, either create or deploy that or even edit it. Like I said, it's not like it's going to be a visual designer, much in the way that you would get inside of Azure AI Studio. Sorry, Foundry made that one. A little slip. The AI or the Foundry Studio agent creator. So I would call this a simple way of actually seeing the stuff. One note, if you are installing this, there is a dependency on the AI toolkit. So that brings in some of the core functionality that's needed by this piece. So that's it in a nutshell for this one. Another thing to kind of mention on the Microsoft side is the ability for semantic kernel and its agent framework. So Um, I need to explain this one a little bit more because I think some people, when they saw this, I even got some questions from some customers on this. So this was released. What is it today? We're recording this on the 12th. So roughly about 6 days ago, 7 days ago, this was made generally available. So what is this? So this is semantic kernel. Semantic kernel has been out for a while. There's new functionality that's always being added into semantic kernel. So one of them was an agent framework. So this is the thing that just went GA again, like I said, a couple of days ago. Specifically, it was April 4th. So what this does is allows you as a developer with semantic kernel to build agents. So I can construct agents. I can define what the agent does. There's functionality in here in terms of like, do I want a chat agent? I could bring in the tools, all those things that I think about when I'm creating quote unquote agents. Now, what this does is it allows you to build agents specifically inside a semantic kernel. What this is not a ability to use an agent framework inside a semantic kernel that is using the Azure AI Foundry agent service SDK. So they're two separate things. And you might be saying, well, why did Microsoft actually develop something that's not the latest thing that was just released as far as the Foundry AI service? And the answer is, well, if you don't want to be tied or dependent upon the Foundry set of tools, I could go quote unquote pro code only and develop something that is not tied to the Foundry service. So this means I'm creating, instantiating, running all those things directly wherever I want to port that. And again, we've got the ability to run this as an example within Python. So I'm running all that within my own Python environment that's building it. So the thing that will allow us to do is I could tie into other platforms, whether or not it's, again, I mentioned I could still create something like the Azure AI agent service and create those agents. I could also tie into something like the OpenAI assistants. So this allows me to build and construct things that I'm not totally dependent upon one platform or one scenario. So again, bottom line, generally available now, so it's no longer in preview. You do need specific versions of semantic kernel. You have to be at 1.45, and if you're using it in .NET, or 1.27 if you're using it in Python. So this just gives you another quote unquote tool in the arsenal to construct or build things for quote unquote agents within the Microsoft world. All right, moving on. Another thing that we announced is a public preview of an AI red teaming agent. So what this does is it allows me, or allows developers to bring in the tools that we've had already. So we've published this as a tool. It's something called the Python Risk Identification Tool, or Pirate as an short naming term. And I love that because pirate thinks of a pirate doing harm in your code, right? So this brings an agent that can actually automatically scan your AI models for various different content safety risks. And it actually uses this and pairs it with an evaluation attack response pair to generate metrics that align with the attack success rate. So this generates metrics, and there's built-in reporting that allows for detailed reports and understanding of your potential vulnerabilities that you might have within your system. So this, again, is something to use on within your arsenal to ensure that you've got the right safety or responsible AI aligned with applications that you're developing that align with AI, using AI-based models. There may be some questions on how is this cost. It's actually based upon existing business models that Microsoft has for the safety evaluation, which is based upon tokens, and it's actually 2 cents per 1,000 input tokens and 6 cents per 1,000 output tokens. And again, it's all based upon what is being evaluated within the particular model itself. Going on to one other piece, this is some of the, this is not showing up really well, but this is a GIF image that kind of runs through what this thing does, and it evaluates and showing you the output and the assets based on what it has. Another segue into something else is evaluation metrics. So Microsoft introduced new ways of actually looking at and mitigating various different risks. So there's a code vulnerability metric. So this one evaluates AI generated code for various different security risks. And then the other evaluation metric are ungrounded attributes. So this is where it assesses AI generated text for inferences about personal attributes that would not necessarily be grounded in ground truth based upon data. So you could use this within the Azure AI Evaluations SDK, and this is something that can, for developers, that can run automated scans to detect these vulnerabilities. There's also several other metrics that were introduced for agentic applications, and these are things in terms of like intent resolution, accuracy and tool call, in terms of like, hey, what's the selection and order of tools that were being used? And when I say tools, when you have an agent, you identify like tools like code interpreter is a tool, or the various different quote unquote things that you create and plug into the agent. Is it using the right order, or is it even using the right tool in the first place? Task adherence, again, is it aligned with the various different tasks and the compliance of those, as well as then response completeness? Is it thorough in terms of the response? So these are things that are being produced or generated out. And as I said, that those are really around the performance and quality of it. One last one here is there's always new things that are being introduced around tool sets, and the Azure AI service is no different. So this is evolving over time. So one of the things, as far as knowledge tools, like where are you getting your information from? So you could feed data into the Azure agent service, and one of the initial ones were things like leveraging the Azure AI search as an example. So two of the new ones are being able to tie into Fabric. All right. So, I know that the last episode we talked about the data agent inside of Fabric. So the ability for the agent tool to pick up the data agent or surfacing of data, as an example, inside of Fabric. So that's a great thing, because if you're an organization that has bought into Fabric to build things like your lake houses and um, your time series with real-time intelligence, those things can be surfaced up through the data agent, which now can be pulled into the Azure AI Foundry agents that are constructed. The other thing too are third-party providers, and you see one of the first ones, which is TripAdvisor, to be able to get travel data and guidance. So that is now a knowledge set of knowledge that can be quickly integrated with an agent that is built through the agent service itself. So last but
This
not
is
least,
pretty
within
interesting, Jamie. Let's say with the MCP coming in the play, right, and AI Foundry also supporting it, this could really expand, right? Because now there could be tons of more data providers who could provide that, and that could be easily plugged in here in on
yeah,
the canvas.
exactly. I mean, with MCP, if you've looked at the GitHub, and I mean the GitHub repository for the MCP servers grows literally every day. Um, the thing that you need to remember, you need to create that handshake and do some coding within the MCP. So these knowledge sources, you don't have to go through those trials and tribulations for that. This is literally just something you pick up, and you don't have to do any of the quote unquote coding. It's basically already done for you. So this is very quick and easy ways to bring in knowledge. So yeah, I agree with you. Since the Azure AI Foundry and Copilot Studio are supporting MCPs, which then opens up a wealth of those quote unquote knowledge areas because it's going into data sources, you still have to do work. This are things where you don't have to do that quote
Mm,
unquote work or coding. So theoretically making your life easier.
correct.
So
And you don't even need to go outside the Azure boundary, right? This is all within the Azure. I'm not sure about the TripAdvisor, but I think all of them will be still within the confinements of the Azure.
yep. So with that, I'll turn it over to you, Shadab, because I know that there's been some announcements with Copilot or Microsoft Copilot, new features, and there's a lot to unpack.
Yes, so Microsoft is not far behind. In fact, Mustafa Suleyman, who is actually the CEO of Microsoft AI, he has been cooking. So he has been doing a lot of work as well, and I find his vision pretty fascinating, right? He has talked about it. He had done a speech at TED, which was I think last year, and he talked about the vision of the digital species, how the AI is emerging like that. So it is pretty fascinating, and I think he has a certain vision that he's driving to, and now he talks about it as Microsoft Copilot as your AI companion. And towards that, there were a bunch of actually announcements that were made. Some of them are available already. Some of them are actually going to be released soon, etc. As well. So, but here are the things that he generally talked about. This was just this week. So he's talking about First of all, memory, right? So the memory is essentially something what we already talked about at the beginning of the episode, which is like ChatGPT remembering the conversation and knowing you better. Same thing is in the Copilot also now. It can actually you basically memory enables the Copilot to remember the user preferences like favorite foods, interests, and important dates, and it can then give you the customized and personalized suggestions based on that, right? It can send you the reminders based on those profiles. And of course you have a user dashboard to essentially decide what you want the Copilot to remember or not to remember. You can opt out as well completely. So I think that's pretty good, because definitely now that we trust ChatGPT and Microsoft Copilot kind of tools a lot more than 2 years ago, I think people are becoming more comfortable and okay, because they see the value in these assistants, knowing them more and giving them the reminder. Because I'll tell you what, when I was interacting with ChatGPT a couple of months ago, and I talked about I needed something for my daughter, and it remembered what my daughter was using it for. And it remembered that concept. I found it very useful. I didn't have to tell it every time, and it was able to figure it out. It was able to remember, and it was because I've enabled those memory function already. I found it very useful, and I'm okay. I'm trusting that application anyway, right? So that's what Copilot is also going for. So that would be fun to see. um, there is also action. So action is essentially like a computer use kind of the feature. Basically, it's like, essentially you're telling it to do certain things, and it will do it, right? It will do it at the back end. You don't have to, like, it doesn't have to take the control of the computer, etc. But for example, it can complete the task for you. It can, like, for example, you can say that, okay, hey, search for movie tickets, right? Or find the right place for me to store my stuff, right? And can you make the booking? And it will do that for you, right? It can make the restaurant booking for you. And again, it's doing those, completing those tasks. And it can do it with a lot of websites. But it also has the launch partners, like, the 1-800 flowers and things like that, or Verbo or this. So you can do a lot of those tasks at the back end. You don't have to do it yourself. It will do it for you. The other thing is that Copilot vision, right, which is essentially an ability for it to see and understand and look at what, it can even do the real time interaction with the environment using that. So you can, on your mobile app, Copilot app on your mobile, you can actually use the phone's camera to analyze the surroundings, or you can use the stored photos for the actionable insights, right? You can, for example, take a picture of your plant and ask that, okay, what's wrong with this plant, right? So it has that ability to now see things as well. So that's what it can do. And it's available. It's now going to be available on the native Windows application as well, and on the mobile also. And you can actually call this by just on the keyboard. You can just type the shortcut Alt space, and then, or you can even use the voice command. There's also Pages, which we have talked about before a little bit, so I'm not going to go into deep into it. It's essentially kind of a canvas on which you can, build things. It can, Copilot can generate an output, and you can edit and refine and all those kind of things you can do on the Pages. um, this is interesting, Jamie, right? This podcast feature is now coming to Copilot as well. This became popular with that Google audio overview, and now it is going to. I'm
Yeah.
excited about this, actually, to be
Yeah,
honest.
this one I'm excited as well. I mean, I use Notebook LM a lot. I think we did this episode way back, but
Right.
I use it to generate very detailed, or I use it to generate podcasts off of very detailed weather white papers, like that gets into scientific detail, and it's really good because when I'm driving, I'll just put that on and listen to my white paper, which is awesome. So I'm curious to see how well the podcast. I have not used it yet, full disclosure, within Copilot, but that is on my to-do list for this weekend because I do want to compare. Like I said, I've already used Notebook LM to do this. Like, for example, one was on severe thunderstorm generation and how merging cells have an impact on tornado genesis. I want to see how well Copilot podcast actually does, because Notebook LLM nailed it. So just curious to see how it plays out. So yeah, I'm excited about this one, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and I'm gonna try that as well because honestly, the notebook LM, Jamie, I tried a couple of times. It never worked for me. I threw a document, I did everything that it just says processing. It never finished the processing. I don't
Oh
know
well,
what happened. It just doesn't like me.
I was about to say, I don't think it likes you. I've had no problems. I've had zero problems with Notebook. Now, of course, I said that I'm probably going to have a problem next time I use it, but it's been really good for me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, like I'm gonna do it again. In fact, I'm gonna do a comparative version as well and try both of them, like both the Notebook LM as well as podcast, the Copilot, and see which one actually does a better job. So we'll see something like that. But yeah, this would be very exciting. And there is also a shopping as well. It can act as your personal shopper. You can ask it to do a lot of research. I do a lot of research before buying something. I don't go by exactly the sale going on, and I actually really want to make sure that I'm buying something for, because I don't buy. I would say, I like to say, I invest, okay, in
Yeah,
things. Right? So
yeah,
that's my way of saying I don't buy. But if it can do that research and compare and things like that, yeah, I would love actually to use that feature as well. And of course, there is a deep research, which we also talked about earlier. It can do that. And there is a Copilot search, which is already available in Bing, and you can actually use that within the Copilot as well. So, all in all, I think there's a lot of interesting feature that's going to come in the Microsoft Copilot, and I'm actually looking forward to it. And talking about Microsoft, one more thing, Jamie, I wanted to actually close out by saying that this week, on April 8th, there was a Microsoft AI Skills Fest. The event. It was actually a record-breaking attempt. So Guinness World Record. Currently, a company called, I think, Gooey Network Geek Limited, something like that. They actually did a collaboration with the state of India, and I know it's actually one of the most populous state of India, Uttar Pradesh, and they actually did that collaboration for a AI online learning event, and it trained something like 45,000, 46 people, something like that. That's what Microsoft was attempting to break as part of the celebration of 50th anniversary. And I did that April 8th. I took that official attempt. You had to do that within that 24 hours just to be part of this. And if the record is announced and it was successfully accomplished, then everybody will get a badge of, like, okay, having been part of that record attempt. So this was my badge for just attempting, just being part of it. But if we get it, it will take some days. Guinness, generally, they do a thorough process, that they make sure everything is right, everything is done correctly, and then they will announce if it was if the record was broken or not. So looking forward to it. However, this is not ended yet. So the the days of learning continues. It's in fact 50 days of learning to mark the 50th celebration of Microsoft, of course. That continues through May 28th. So if you can go to actually a site, and you can actually see like tons of courses which are available on the site, and people can actually make use of that AI Skills Fest portal to actually continue to learn, and that's what I will recommend.
Hmm, cool. Yeah, that sounds good. I mean, I, I was hoping to actually participate as well in that, but I got pulled into some customer initiatives. But hoping the world record does get broken, I think it's a great way of just bringing people together to learn. So, I mean, that's the ultimate goal. Whether or not the Guinness Book of World Records actually gets broken or not, it's about the intent.
Exactly, and you can see that, right? I mean, this portal, Jamie. This is that Microsoft AI Skills Fest portal. People can go here through the May 28th. They can still continue to learn, and there are several different like tracks. One is for tech professional. There's a business professional, the student, public sector. There are all kind of tracks, and you can actually continue to learn on this as well. So it's while the attempt was only for one day, but the learning continues.
Cool. Sounds good.
All right.
So with that, I think spent a lot of time today covering a lot of different topics, and hopefully, people found, if not one, multiple things useful for them today. And looking forward to the next episode.
Talk soon, Jimmy. Bye,
Thanks,
everyone.
Bye bye.